Here's what we can count on buyers doing. They are going to refer to their alternative, and that alternative could be a named competitor. It could be, I will build it myself. I will do nothing. And then they will use that alternative to leverage concessions and free stuff. And in fact, the most common buyer tactic in the world is I can get the same thing from someone else cheaper. Leverage that alternative and then try to push you for concessions.
I say to people, if you've got a problem and they feel that you understand them, and they feel that you really get them, and you really, going back to your point of caring and being really interested in their interests, and then you give them some belief that here's how we're going to solve it, here's how we make it happen, here's how we bring the magic to life, and here's who we've done it for before, and here's how you can trust and talk to these people, you win deals.
Okay, great. Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Great to have, as I always love to do, have some brilliant guests on the podcast. And this week I've got a wonderful guy who we connected and had some great conversations and with his team around huge amounts of knowledge from all areas of sales, business development, negotiation, and especially as we move into the area of AI, there's some exciting stuff that Brian's going to share with me. So I've got Brian Dietmeyer as a guest on the podcast. So welcome, Brian.
Hello, James. It's fun to be here.
Look, well, great. Look, so before we, get started, for those of you that you're based in the US, and we had a brief chat about your plans to move from, or to go down to get some warm weather in the coming days. But tell everyone a bit more about your career. I know you've had an incredible career. You've written 3 amazing books. You've been, you were very senior in sales at Marriott. You've built companies yourselves. You're building companies all the time. So you've got this incredible sales career that you've had. But to tell everyone the bits that I've missed out of that and a bit more about your journey over the past few years.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's interesting too, as I thought about that question. Like I grew up, for those who aren't familiar with Chicago is kind of divided in the north side and the south side, and sort of not to be gauche, but more money is in the north side than the south side, right? And so I grew up, my mom cleaned houses, my dad owned a tavern, a local neighborhood tavern, and no, nobody in our family, kind of went to school. And so I went to night school for 8 years for undergrad, and then 2 years weekends for grad school. So I think that to me is an important part of, when my career started. I was a student at a community college cleaning glasses. They call it a bar back here in the US, right? Cleaning glasses for the bartender, and left there 17 years later with an undergrad, a grad degree, and a VP title. So it's like, but the company grew, right? So it's like I think we went from 70 to 2,500 hotels by the time I left. So it's one of those things where, like, if you're good and you're speaking full sentences and work hard, you're going to get swept up in that tide of growth, right? So yeah, I did that for a number of years. I sold, and then was a national account guy, then became a VP of national accounts. And then actually during grad school, met my partner, and then we started the first consulting firm, Think Inc., which focused on negotiation. And we did global rollouts for Google, Microsoft, FedEx there. And now we started this new company, Close Strong, which is leveraging AI to train salespeople and kind of lose that mindset of these 2-day events, right? And how do we sustain that effort with reps, not the 2-day drive-by events?
And we're going to kind of pick up on that part definitely as we go through, because one of the challenges for people is consuming information. And like you say, that element of just, I call it sheep dipping people doesn't work. Yeah. You literally put them in a dip and they're going to be okay. But we'll come and pick up on that. But talk to you obviously built an incredible career, when you did what we did with Marriott. I mean, how, people look at that, it's a global brand, it's a big brand, it achieved, incredible things. And how was that part? What were the best parts of that career journey? And what were the parts that you made you think, oh, I don't want to go back there?
It's your questions are so good. As I mentioned to you as we were getting ready for this, that like it really made me think. And I will tell you on that one, I look back, I didn't grow up in a white collar family. I didn't know how companies worked, diplomacy, politics, all of those things. And there was some intuitive thing that was down in there where I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I joke, everybody younger than me is 12. And I often joke and say I was a VP at 12 and I had no skills and no chops. And I had this agreement with Marriott where I would say, I want this job. And they would say, okay, you do these things and you'll get that job. I did the things, they gave me the job. I did the things, they gave me the job, all the way up to the VP level. And it was I still have such warm feelings for that company, especially for Bill Marriott himself. It was that contract that I don't know if it exists that clearly anymore with people, but and it was even before I had, an MBA and all that sort of stuff. Like I was climbing up the ladder because we had an agreement and they honored theirs and I honored mine. And it was quite simple that way.
And how do you obviously mentioned people like Bill Marriott there, but the fact that you work for people like that, and what great business. What are the key? I get to ask you a question about the mentors and the people you've had in your career, but people like that, you want to help but learn from people like that, right? That have just got this incredible knowledge, and what did they give you? Is there anything particular that they imparted on you that stayed with you as your career's growing?
Yeah, for sure. And I've realized, and for those of you who are bosses, someone I was on a podcast the other day and somebody was saying that like your boss as a salesperson probably has more influence on your life than your husband or wife because you're with them more, right? And it's tied more to who you are and your value. And I look back at some bosses I had, Steve Wise, Roger Dow, Ray Warren, these guys that I had relationships with, and we were a team. And they, it's the old adage that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And so I was lucky to have a bunch of good ones. But I will tell you, Bill Marriott to this day is one of my absolute heroes. And as a national account VP, I had access to our biggest customers, so he used to see them. So I got opportunity to spend time. And I will share with you a few things that he taught me, not me directly, but sometimes in meetings working with groups of us. And he said once that the same things that lead to your success are the same things that lead to your failure. If you keep doing those in your next job. And I thought about that as a national account sales guy moving into a leadership position. I was a lone wolf. I was the troublemaker, the rebel, and that's what they wanted in that job. But, and the rock star. When I became the new VP, it was my job now to develop rock stars. And that's a transition that I think is difficult for a lot of people. Another thing he said to me once, we were trying to make a decision on deflagging some franchise hotels, and they delivered a lot of profit to us in terms of management fees, but they weren't meeting associate satisfaction, guest satisfaction, and profit. Those are the three measurements. And we were struggling. Customers aren't happy, employees aren't happy, the numbers aren't great, but we get fees regardless. And we were all struggling. Bill Marriott walked in the room and he had this very slow kind of drawling style. And he came in and he said to us, every decision you make is a deposit into or a withdrawal from brand equity, and walked out of the room. And we immediately deflagged. We deflagged all of these buildings. So it's another thing he said. And I'll add one more. He said, success is never final, which is frightening. You have to keep charging constantly. Like if you think you're a rock star and you're doing great, it's not guaranteed. So those are three things. And James, this was 20 plus years ago, and I can quote him verbatim. I hear his words in my head and they drive me every day still.
But do you know what, Brian? There's such great points there. And actually, it's funny. I was with a group of sales guys today, and doing some trade. So, we'll talk about that later on. But I was talking to them about the things that make up great salespeople, and it's that consistency, and that's the ability to your best month, your last month's your best month, right? But go again. And it's just that, and I think you're quite right. I love that. Success is never final. There's no end to it, right? You've just got to keep on chipping and keep on chirping, and you keep on putting the one foot in front of the other. And the moment, I actually used a quote with him that I used from my growth, which was, success breeds complacency, complacency breeds failure. Only the paranoid survive. And I was saying to them, this element of continuing to just wake up and say, I've got to keep doing, I've got to keep staying ahead. And especially we'll talk about AI a bit later, but the companies that are resting on their laurels with technology coming up are going to get bitten.
Yeah. Well, and you just gave the flip side of exactly that same statement. And I completely agree with it. And that other thing that's frightening is, the things that lead to your success are the same things that lead to your failure. Like if you keep doing them as you move, and that's a difficult concept because you have this emotional attachment to these creatures, these beings that helped you get there, and you need to murder those beings and find new beings. That's not easy to do.
It's not easy to, especially when you're, salespeople, unfortunately, and business people we're as human beings, we're natures of, we don't like change so much a lot of the time, right? And it's actually ability to build to, and you were saying beforehand that you and your wife, you travel down to spend some time in Florida, and that sort of element of change. It's sort of like moving away from what you've got and having to that. But that's actually part of that experience, I guess, of going actually doing something new and putting yourself into a different position and challenging yourself.
Yeah, it is. It's like for my new business, I'm primarily a product manager and managing a team of engineers for an AI company. And you already talked about my background. You're in it. I often say to people, it's not a learning curve, it's a learning stick. It's just straight up every single day, especially with the speed that this stuff changes. But it's awesome and frightening. But yeah, it's funny. My wife and I were just talking about this the other day about like redefining yourself. It's a very frightening thing to do until you're when you're in the process of redefine. Like you look at it and go, oh, that's cool, but then you have to do it, and you're not there yet to the other side.
It is difficult. I want to come on to AI and how AI is changing sales in quite a bit of detail, but I want to talk about some other areas of your background and career force. I mean, talk about sales, because obviously, sales and being in engagement and building relationships with people is something you've done for your life and you're comfortable with doing. But there's a lot of parts of it that other people find challenging, isn't there? There's a lot of parts of it that, whether it's selling or especially the ability to have conversations and difficult conversations with people that people find challenging. What is it about those elements you think that so many people find difficult?
Yeah, it's another great question because I go back to my early career. I was a sales guy at a Marriott hotel, and my job was to bang the phones all day long of calling meeting planners and convention planners and saying, "Hey, will you bring your convention to my hotel?" And I used to just put up a steel wall, like I was bulletproof, and I would just like, okay, it's like do the push-ups, do the jumping jacks, and then get into it and bang, 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 and I was pretty bulletproof, like many, if anyone's listening, who bangs the phones and does that. I mean, you have to be bulletproof. And I think I was pondering a few months ago, like, am I tired of selling? And I realized, no, I'm not. But I am at a point in my career where I don't want to bang the phones anymore, and it gets more fun the bigger the deal is, and it's not really about the money. To me, it's kind of a scorecard. Right? It's like you win a sporting event, by 40 points versus 3. And that's, yeah, I think it's the evolution. So I think I wondered as I thought about that question, like it's difficult to define selling as selling, right? If you're in a more strategic sale and you're doing bigger pitches and bigger presentations, that's a blast. But cold pitching small deals anymore, so maybe that's part of it for people. It's like, are we evolving or are we still selling the way we used to sell?
I think also the part you mentioned about being bulletproof, and that's like, in my experience, so many people just don't want any form of, they don't want any form of rejection. They get, we live, unfortunately, in a society that just faces, one bit of rejection. And, I have a business that, that makes calls still for people. And I say to the team that we have there, you've got to just be resilient, because that's the nature of the game. I started selling in the UK double glazing, and double glazing and turning in the UK was one of the hardest things you can do. And I said, it is tough. It's a tough game, but you've got to be bulletproof to do that. But
yeah, but I think, James, there's also drive, because I go back to when I was bulletproof, and I just felt, given where I came from, how I teed up this conversation, to be in the room wearing a suit for this big company and having all this, an $18 billion corporation behind me. I just felt so damn lucky to be there that I was going to do whatever I saw. Maybe that's, whatever your drive is, I think helps you be bulletproof, because it's just like, okay, I either do this or I go back behind the bar and wash glasses, or I go back and work construction, which I was doing before that. So.
And that's a really good point. I think I talked about that sort of the why. I sometimes call it the duvet, or the duvet chuck, or the reason for getting up and the reason for getting going. And sometimes at my age it's going to the loo, but in the middle of the night. But what still drives you right now? Because obviously you've built businesses. We'll talk about Think in a bit, and you've written books, and what is that? What's that drive for you still now, then, Brian? Because you've obviously built a new company and you built. What's that duvet chuck for you?
Yeah. I keep saying, and I love your questions, because I was telling you that you forced me to kind of rethink my whole career with some of this stuff. And I think it's I didn't realize it at the time, but it's like at several points in my career, I've been as a sales guy, I was kind of a rock star. And then as I became a young VP, and then I started my first company, and we did really well with that. And it was another swing at bat. That's what still drives me. It's just like not resting on the laurels. Do I still have it? Can I disrupt? In fact, what we're building now is putting huge pressure on my old business, which is what you're supposed to do. Put yourself out of business. But yeah, it's simply that drive. It's back to that game about one more swing at bat. Can I, not to use too many sports analogies, but can I knock it out of the park one more time?
Yeah. And that drive and that ability to build a business is, especially on a business around AI, and those that are watching and those that will know you've had an extensive career, right? You wrote your first book in 1990, it was 1996. So you've been around the block for a while, right? So that hunger and that desire to still want to swing at the bat says a lot about you, and it says a lot for younger people listening to this that you've still got to just have that want and desire to keep doing it, right? And it's the thrill. I guess it's the thrill. It's a bit, I always say it's the thrill of doing it, isn't it? It's the thrill of winning business and doing deals and having conversations where you can make something happen. That it's an addiction, I call it.
Yeah. No, I think it is, and I think a mistake is making it only about money. That my drive is to make more money. It's fine. We that's the scoreboard. That's how we get compensated for what we do. But yeah, it's got to be something a little more intrinsic, I think, to really drive. My wife just did this in her 50s, just went back and got a degree in data science, and she's a data scientist, a brand new one at this point in her career. So it's funny. We were talking the other day about both of us completely redefining ourselves professionally, yet once again. But that all of that stuff for both of us comes from a more personal drive than income. Income, yes, of course. But yeah.
Keeps you young, right? But look, so you've written, the thing is, you've written 3 books, and to write one book it's hard enough. I'm trying to write one at the moment; it's hard enough. But you've written 3, and they, the books for anyone will put some links into the show notes. But the focus around, I love the idea of the B2B street fighting. That's to one that was really intrigued me about negotiation. But just dig into that, because I know you've got other stuff now, but negotiation was an area that was your previous business you focused on for a long period of time. What is it about negotiation that made you so intrigued, and what made you sort of have that smile in your face when you sort of worked with people on that?
Yeah. Part of it was I was a VP when I was getting my MBA, and it was my negotiation professor's class where I just thought, wow, this is good. And I approached him and said, hey, I approached him actually to come into our organization and do some work, and he was too expensive. So then that evolved into a dialogue about, hey, why don't you just start a business doing this? So, so that was the origins of it. But the thing that really drives me and continues to drive me is negotiation problems have been completely misdiagnosed, and then therefore the solution has been misprescribed, right? People think a thing about negotiation. So then, like if you look out there, there's literally a book called 53 Truths of Negotiating. There's another one, 101 Ways to Win Every Time in Negotiation, are all very, very interesting. But people believe that negotiation is very unpredictable. You kind of never know what's going to happen. So, they put 53 arrows in your quiver, and it's like when that animal comes up, you pull out this arrow and shoot it. And it's like really interesting stuff, but it's really hard to scale. When you're on the front lines and bullets are shooting at you, and some procurement professional is taking your hat off about price, and your competitor just undercut you and you guys suck. And, it's like, it's hard to go back to 53 arrows and go, what the hell should I do? So that was a part of the drive. Yeah, that was part of my drive, is saying there has to be more process and mechanics behind this. It cannot all be soft skills, and it isn't, by the way. So that's been the drive for me, is completely rethinking how we think about the negotiation problem, and therefore how we define the solution.
And just to build and unpack that further, you mentioned those sort of aspects of giving people some stuff they can use. What are some of the, just for those listening that are struggling with this, or struggling with the element of being able to negotiate, whether it's a deal, whether it's an existing client, they've got any 2 or 3 tips that you would from that not the 53 quivers, but you would give them just as a starter for 10 to focus on when they're looking at negotiation there.
Yeah, I would say, and this is the area of our work that I'm most proud of. If we start with the end game, I'm sitting across the table from James, and James is saying really mean things to me. James is a buyer at XYZ company. Um, and I won't bore you with all the research, but we did research in 19 countries for 2 years. It was a large project. And part of that project was asking reps all over the world in all of these different industries, what do you hear on a daily basis that knocks you back on your heels in negotiation, like down to the level of words? What do people say to you? And at one point, we didn't use that part of the research, and my wife worked for the company at the time, and I asked her to look into thousands and thousands and thousands of really mean things that buyers said to sellers all over the world and look for a pattern. And she came back to me and said, about 51% sits over here and about 47% sits over here in this other bucket. And then there's a couple percent that I couldn't, unintelligible responses, you know? So I said, wait a minute, you're telling me that at the time, it was 97% of what buyers said to sellers all over the world in the moment of truth falls into two categories. And she said, yes. And I made a massive mistake of saying, there's no way that can't be right. I went back and through, and we're going to get to the point about how this helps people in a moment. I went back through and recoded all this stuff. I sent it off to my partner, Max, at Harvard and said, hey, is this legit? And he said, yes. Which he never did to our research. Every subsequent customer we sign up, we survey the reps, say, what do you hear on a daily basis that kicks your butt? And we run it through the thing and it all follows the same pattern. So here's what we can count on buyers doing. They are going to refer to their alternative. And that alternative could be a named competitor. It could be, I will build it myself. I will do nothing. And then they will use that alternative to leverage concessions and free stuff. And in fact, the most common buyer tactic in the world is I can get the same thing from someone else cheaper. Leverage that alternative and then try to push you for concessions. And the words are all different. Sometimes it's just concessions. It's not on my budget. Lower your price. Those limits liability are wrong. All that kind of thing. But we know with a 97% probability, we do know it's completely predictable what's going to happen in the end game. The end game is going to be a conversation about your competition, and maybe even, again, your competition could be, I'm going to build it myself. And it's going to be a discussion around, give me some stuff. So how do we anticipate early on, long before the negotiation, what's the most likely alternative? We know they're going to try to say they're better, or, and so it's knowing more about that alternative than the other side does before the discussions even start. And then it's being prepared for what are the things we know what we're going to get concession pressure on, right? You've done 100 deals and all of those follow a pattern. So how are we ready for that? So if you know that alternative better, and the 2 or 3 reasons why you versus someone else, that's not only going to raise your win rate, it's going to allow you to defend your commercial terms. If you are worse than the alternative, you cannot defend price or something like that, right? You're going to have to cave. And so this is it. Know that this is going to happen. Start thinking about that in advance and be ready. We call it changing the conversation. We know the conversation is going to be same thing cheaper. So very early on, start thinking about that and have better data than your customer and your competitor.
Do you know what? When you were talking there, I was thinking about this, and of course, being in sales for a long time myself, I think about negotiation not in the same level of detail and the way you've done it with the books and stuff you've read. But actually, you're right. Actually, there's an alternative, and give me something for it, right? So it's that aspect of, you think back down to the simple nuts and bolts of it. It's what are those things? And I guess I've talked to people about sales being a game of chess a lot of the time, where you've got to be able to know what the pawns on the board are going to be and how someone's going to react. And if you look at the grand masters of chess, they're the people that will think ahead of the stage, right? And I guess that's what you're saying, is just to be able to think ahead and do your work and do your preparation work, so that when you come to those conversations, you're in a position to then know what you're going to say and do, but also hold your ground.
Yeah. And some people think that that's preparation and then there's the negotiation. I would say no. The most powerful part of the negotiation is anticipating what that conversation is going to be and begin collecting data around that and have a plan in place, and then begin slowly, subtly changing that conversation over time. So when you get to the end game, you're ready for it. The other sort of quick giveaway I'll give you is something that the academics in this space called anchoring and adjusting. And a better word for that is my old partner, Max, said to me once, the opening offer on a deal has more impact on the final outcome than all subsequent counter offers combined. And if you think about that for a moment, that opening offer, it might be a number, right? A price where the other side is throwing that out there. And then the other part is like, what is it that they're throwing the price out there for? Like I was in the training business, are they saying, well, you need to do this at $600 a person, for this training event? And when in fact we want $1,000 a person to improve their revenue or improve their win rate, right? We don't want to be talking about training events. We want to be talking about business impact. So I think this is a mistake a lot of people make. And what we do, I think of that opening offer as a dart that goes on a dartboard, and then all subsequent counter offers and darts hover around that first dart. So you're only making marginal changes. So if their offer was ridiculous, and you react to that, you're probably not going to react enough to counteract it. So part of it is being aware of someone else offensively using an opening offer and not reacting, like looking at that and saying, no, that's ridiculous. And I often say you have to ignore it. And there's multiple ways to ignore it based on your own style, but mine would be asking questions, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about whatever. But to counter, to say, oh my gosh, you're at 600 for a training event. We typically get 1,000 for a training event. Now we have a range of 600 to 1,000. And their thing is and on average you end up in the middle somewhere, which is well below what our current yield is. We see this over and over again, watching negotiations happen live, and with an untrained mind, those offers, as ridiculous as they are, will end up impacting the outcome. And again, it's just not the number, it's the way they're branding or phrasing, whatever it is they're buying from you. Are you buying a training class or are you buying forecast accuracy?
Amazing. And think about it in terms of, like you say, it's about just being able to, I totally agree with you around the sort of the anchoring part, around being able to position or to frame that part of the conversation, I guess. And it's one of those things that, again, people that the right training and knowledge know how to do. And I guess it's also, but also I guess it's thinking about it from a, negotiation perspective, it's not just the words you say, it's the delivery part that's also key, right? And the way in which that method is and message is delivered to such a way that people think, wow, this guy knows, this guy's not for, not kidding here. And you've trained people and worked with people, has that been one of the biggest challenges they face? They know what to do, but it's just being able to execute it.
Yeah, I listened up at Northwestern University. I listened to an expert on not negotiation, but it'll come to me in a moment. It's like renegotiating an existing broken agreement. And she said there's 3 ways to resolve it: interest, rights, and power. And interest is the underlying interest of both sides. Rights is usually like legal based. No, you broke this agreement, I'm going to have the lawyers go after you. And power would, like, when you have a better alternative than the other side. One of the things she said is power is a baseball bat that you're bringing to a discussion, and you put that baseball bat behind your back and you let the tip of that bat peek out every now and then. And that's the best. Is dispute resolution is the word I was looking for. But in a dispute, you always want to be interest based. Rights based gets crazy because now the lawyers are involved, the relationship goes down, the costs go up. But power should be used, but it has to be used diplomatically. And one of the ways we do that, we call it signaling. I was working with a company that's like a data management company, and they had a ton of records, 20, 50,000 records embedded in a company that said they were going to build their own thing, better, cheaper. And so we came up with a series of questions related to designing that, installing that, maintaining that, and taking the heat when it doesn't work politically. And so that was one of the diplomatic ways of letting that bat peek over the shoulder of what we call signaling them on that alternative. And the good news is, if they're lying, they know it's not better, faster, cheaper. We've just let them know that we know as well. But if they've misdiagnosed, which is probably more often, they've misdiagnosed, they might believe they can do it better, faster, cheaper. We should have just put the fear of God in them by asking these questions. And it's a very diplomatic way to do it. But I think you're right. It's like, how do How do you do that? And a lot of that comes down to your own style and your relationship with that buyer. I will talk different ways to different people, based on my relationship with them. So, but diplomatically educating the other side. If you think of it from a consulting role, negotiation is really about decision making. You have two parties, and now in today's market, multiple parties probably on both sides of the table trying to make a decision to accept or reject a deal. And so how can you help them make an optimal decision? That mindset helps me. If I think they're about to make a bad decision, on my solution, how can I, if it comes from the place like in my heart, that's like, I'm trying to help James make a better decision and I'm going to provide James with insight, that helps do it in a diplomatic way as well.
I love it. And I like the idea of what you get a lot of talk to about salespeople about, we touched on this a minute ago about doing things for money or doing things because it's the right thing to do. It's what you want to do. And I guess that also goes back to negotiation, right? It's having that. And there are some people, unfortunately, that don't have that same heart and that element to do things in that way, right? But I mean, if anyone's listening to this and they're feeling like they're being hard done by someone, negotiation wise, is it just a case of let karma take its toll, or is it, and I guess the final question, let's move on is, is there a point where people should walk away? What do you say when people ask you this question? I'm sure you've had with people saying, when should I walk away from a negotiation? Is that based upon the knowledge and again the insights you've got ahead of that conversation and knowing what they can and can't do? I'm guessing based on what you said.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to we do this thing called blueprinting negotiation, and if we know that 97% of the stuff's falling into the two buckets of the alternative and the concession pressure, to get ready for negotiation, you simply ask the question, what are the consequences to both sides if we don't agree? And we can even add to that by saying, think about the hard and soft, long and short term benefits and sort of downsides to each side of losing a deal. This is objective analysis. It's not making up, oh, it's terrible for them. It's like, no, let's look at the true consequences. And when yours aren't so bad, that's when you walk. Like when they're asking you to take something well below market yield and there's no other strategic reason to take this deal, you walk. And I hear this from a lot of VPs of sales, is that the culture in our organization is kind of win at all costs, sort of like doctors, keep the body alive at all costs. And no, there's a point where the life should be over and the person is probably saying, yes, please, let's make it be over. And it's the same with deals. When your alternative, when they're getting this thing down to the nub of a deal that's no longer good for you, the other problem is one of people don't think about multiple rounds. If you do something on this deal, that's going to impact the next deal and maybe the next deal after that. We worked with a company in Silicon Valley, California, who always had the coolest, best tools and software out there, and they always held a gun to their customer's head. And then some other competitors caught up, and we had to come in and help them undo years of the market, like them holding a gun to the market's head. And it's the same thing. I've worked on the buy side as well. And when buyers come at the end and they chip away, what do they call it? Nibbling at the end of a deal, And my point to buyers is like, what do you think that does in multiple rounds? You're teaching your sellers to hold back, and then you're going to play all these games and you're not, it's like, that's the other mistake that people make is, and it goes back to when should we walk? When you think about multiple rounds in the deal, you should probably walk because there's going to be a ripple effect in the market if you do too many of those. And the other funny thing is, and you probably know this, and maybe people listening know this, there are times when you say, okay, I'm out. Like, I can't do this anymore, that pulls the other side back in. I hear that all the time. The moment we got tough and said, no, sorry, James, we're not playing that game, it gets back on track.
Totally right. And I talk to people a lot in the work I do about having BMW customers, as I call it, and this came from a good friend of mine, a business partner of mine. People say, what do you mean a BMW customer? I call a bitcher, a moaner and a whiner, right? So actually, if you've got a BMW customer who is everything you do, they're picking fault at, and they want it to pick fault in every single price or whatever. Do you know what? Sometimes you just don't give your best. So actually, in this elements around negotiation, you better have to say, hey, no worries, I wish you well, good luck. And especially if you know the fact they've not got an alternative, or the fact that they've not got anything else to go to, it puts you back in that front seat, right? To be able to go, well, actually, no, by the way, even if you do want to work with me now, my terms have changed.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, you will find I would go as far as to say more often than not, it pulls the other side
Yes.
back to the table a little bit. But again, this is not an emotional decision you make. This is based on what your alternative looks like. You know, you're working on this deal. You got to look at all the other deals in your pipe and say, yeah, how are those compared to this one? And if the majority of those are much better deals, then go there. Go spend your time on those. And you know, Lou, I had someone say to me the other day in a tech field, like lose early, lose fast. And we don't do that, you know. But obviously, another one of my consultants said once, the path to greatness in sales is not losing deals. And so I think that's a fair, insightful statement. But we don't lose fast enough. We don't lose early enough when we know we cannot manage this thing back to a healthy place.
Well, and I love that, and I think you're right. It's there's a guy, again, a couple of people I know that we talk about with regard to people, hire slow, fire fast. It's like you make decisions and doing that way, and failure. Everyone's afraid of failure a lot of time, and they're afraid that what it means. But actually, it's a great teacher. Failure is a great teacher if you don't leave. It doesn't teach you for that long because you then learn actually that not to do certain things. So just
Well, it's sorry, James, but that was an earlier question about why people hate sales. It's like it's what is it, 90% failure that we have? Like it's well, I guess it depends on if you look at win rates of deals, depending on what the average win rate of deals right now is 47%. I think in tech it's like 16 or 20%. So that means you're losing 50 to 80% of the time. That's why a lot of people don't like it, and that's where we need to be bulletproof. And you're right, when you lose them, that's where win-loss analysis comes in to go, okay, what could I have done? What next time? Maybe I hung on to it too long, or maybe I screwed up, making a connection to their business and their KPIs, whatever it is. But we can't beat ourselves up over this. We've just got to learn and look back and go, okay, is there something I could have done better? Cool. I won't do that again in the next deal.
yeah, definitely. And we're going to talk about the element around the trading part in a sec. But another question just for you, before you've obviously built up some skills, incredible skills from your selling career and your negotiation career over the years. If someone, if you could, boil down two of your, if two or three key skills and attributes that you've developed over your career that have been so critical for you in building and achieving what you have, was there anything, you mentioned sort of asking questions earlier on, but is there anything in particular that, two or three things that you think have always just stood you so well and helping you achieve what you have?
Yeah, and I think the author's name was Piero Ferrucci, I think, and he wrote a book, something like called the Power of Caring or something like that, and that was a theme for one of my company meetings one year, and I was just like, giving a shit more about all of than your competitors do. Really caring is a brutal competitive strategy. So I would say on the softer part of the skills, like really caring, like you're dealing with a human who's just trying to do his or her job and keep his or her job and get promoted and go home and see their family or do whatever they're going to do. And if you really understand that there is a human or humans, and how can I help them be successful? So I think that's a mindset. But the other part is I start almost every first call with, if I was pitching you today and I didn't know you all that well, I would say, James, I have no idea if I have anything to sell you. And I've watched some of my partners in this new business cringe when I do that. But I don't begin with that, I don't begin with trying to pitch a solution, because I think fundamentally what makes a great rep today and what I try to do is diagnose first. And that'd be my point. I don't know if I have anything to sell you, but I do have a very prescribed diagnostic process, and then I'll prescribe a solution if there's an opportunity there. And it takes really, it's you can literally, like, it's mostly on Zoom calls anymore, but I've watched when some of my partners are pitching deals and they're pitching hard, and I can see people like physically leaning back. And when you say, hey, no pressure, I'm not going to try to sell you anything today, people will lean in. And I think that's opposite of the aggressive approach that a lot of people have been taught over the years.
I agree with you more on that. I'm so glad. It's so great when I meet people who've got a similar mindset, and I talk about it being the pressure valve. I say release the pressure valve, right? You release the pressure valve. Just that, when they're in that environment, whether they, even if they've had a meeting, they have the conversation with you, they're thinking you're going to sell to them, so they go the opposite way, right? It's that interrupt, it's that pattern change. Yeah, hey, am I not? We may not be good fit. We may not be right to work together. do you know what? If we're not, hey, we've only lost half an hour or an hour of time, and I'm going to wish you well, and you can wish me well, and we'll go our separate ways. And people then start to think, wow, okay, so they're not just trying to, but no, because you know what? If I push you down a path that isn't going to work, it's going to hurt me. It's going to hurt my brand. No, let's have that conversation and open dialogue. It's so great. He said, and I love what I've written it down that diagnose, then prescribe. And I think so many salespeople are in that position of going in and pitching and telling and talking rather than listening and understanding and learning.
It's just absolutely amazing to me because it was maybe almost, was it 15 years ago when Corporate Executive Board came out with this research that, buyers are ahead of sellers. The buyer journey, they're 60 to 90% into their journey by the time they contact us. And I just asked someone the other day, do you think we've reacted and changed enough? Are we understanding that? And that completely changes our role. And the answer has been, for most people I talk to, no. We're still, many of us are still pitching, throwing a solution at a problem we don't understand. Meanwhile, the whole buy side has changed radically. And so I think we're really, really behind in a lot of solutions in the marketplace. They didn't fix it. Companies bought, training classes and all kinds of things to try to get that fixed. But I'm hearing, I've executed about 80 of my own podcasts, and I'm hearing this from a lot of leaders that I'm talking to, that we're still pitching. Show up and throw up.
We are. I think too many. I mean, I had a meeting with sales training with a team that I've been working for a little while, and a number of them were keen to learn and whatever else. And they were, but these are salespeople that have been going sales for 10, 15 years. Some of them, but that was their process, right? That was their method, and talking to someone, the talk conversation I had with them is, was sell the problem, not the product, right? So talk to the problem, talk to the issue that's going on. So if there is no issue, you can't sell anything. I say to people all the time, people only buy for two reasons. It's either a problem or a desire, right? They've even got an issue going on in their world they want fixed, and POs find pain. And if you literally have got pain and you can find out what that pain is, and you can diagnose that pain, and you can give them a prescription of a painkiller that's going to fix it, they'll buy from you, right? If they believe it's going to work.
Well, this goes back to what we started with the same things that got you to where you're at are the same things that are going to knock you out. So yes, salesperson, just because he or she has been successful in the past, it's like the world has changed. And, one other thing that came to mind, and I wonder if this is because you seem to have a similar selling style. You're right. People expect us to pitch when they have a meeting with us. And we've found, and this is where I'm curious to see if it's happened to you, we've now had to sort of do a precursor to some of those meetings to let them know up front when we're setting the agenda, you're not going to get a pitch, because it's backfired on us a couple times where, they have 4 people show up and they're expecting us to come in and do a pitch, and we just have a bunch of diagnostic questions for them. And even though that's better for them, it's not what they expected. So yeah, and maybe it's happened to you, but it's happened a few times where now we're like, just so you know, we'll pitch you later, but we're not going to pitch you on this next call.
It's really interesting, actually. I think it does a little bit depend. Sometimes whether it's the US, when I've sold in the US, people are expecting to pitch a bit more sometimes, which sort of fits that. I guess in the UK, sometimes people are a bit more conservative and don't want that as much. But I still, I think I tell all the guys that I train and work with and the people on my podcast and my YouTube channel, your job to go in, and I use the Stephen Covey phrase, seek first to understand to then be understood, right? And if you go in with that mindset of, I'm going to get to know what's going to happen. And for me, because when I'm selling, I want to go in and understand, because if I know the problem's big enough and I can fix it, great. I'm open to having a conversation about what that looks like. But I also don't know if they're going to value my services and they're going to value what I do. So unless you start listening to what people are saying and having the conversation, and what impact that pain is having on them, and how it changes their world and what it does for them, I don't know how anyone can just go in and pitch initially, and without, to me, I'm a bit like, I don't even understand how you can even think that's the right approach.
I know, yeah. What are you pitching toward? It's like you can't.
It's like trying to throw. It's like trying to throw. It's like trying to throw. You guys in the US, it's like trying to throw a football to who? Who am I throwing a football to? Which wide receiver am I going? Or am I going the running back? Or am I just throwing a ball, hoping it's going to get there? I mean,
but what I just heard you describe is what I've been hearing a lot in the last month is curiosity. that we have to be curious, which that to me, it's like, the first time I heard it, I was like, yeah, it's okay. And then I heard it several more times. And when you were talking through that, that's what that is. Are you curious? Which is completely different than I'm coming in to pitch a product. No, I'm coming in because with curiosity, and I want to know if there's something there.
Well, the other bit I talk to the teams again I work with is not just be curious, be invaluable and informative. So what I'm saying is, if you audience, actually, if you're going to talk to a CFO or a CEO or whatever else, understand their world, right? Get inside that world beforehand. Like, I know that in your industry right now, these are the big challenges that the marketplace is seeing. There's AI. I'm going to talk about AI and the business. These are, these regulatory environments, these political things, whatever's going on, right? These issues that are happening, these are affecting your world right now. And if you don't think it right now, they're going to affect your world because of these reasons. Here's something to bear in mind. So when you're adding that insight and that value that makes someone go, okay, so rather than being the seller who is just pitching and even just asking the questions, it's like, this guy provides insight. This guy's got knowledge. I've got to keep him on the radar because he knows stuff, right? And that's where I think the sales dynamic changes as well. People then start to think, okay, this person can add value to my business.
Well, it's interesting. I spoke with a sales enablement lead, and she talked a lot about the human side, about empathy and that sort of thing. And her point was that when people sense that curiosity or that caring, that they are then more vulnerable. They're allowing themselves to be more vulnerable. And then, by the way, in that period of vulnerability, they're going to share more data with you. So it's like, it seemed kind of soft. And when she said that, I was like, wow, you're really right. If you do come in with empathy, which bleeds vulnerability, which then bleeds insight.
Oh, agreed, totally. So look, conscious of time, but I want to talk about your close strong, because this is the new business you've created as well. And
Yeah.
you put this in place, and as a guy with a lot of experience, you like you say, you keep swinging the bat, and you've swung the bat with this one. So talk a little bit about close strong and also more about AI, because AI, I talk about people in sales and AI being the one thing that, robots can't do quite yet is sell, right? They can't build the human connection elements that we do. But talk to me about, what made you start Close Strong, and what is it, use this as a chance to, what is it, you're helping people do right now?
Yeah. Well, and I'll tee it up with, first sort of a disclaimer that I still have a company that does training classes, right? And a lot of people want training classes. That being said, that model has been around since the 80s, that we have this methodology, and then we do a rollout. We announce it at SKO. We then do a rollout, and we've done some 8,000 person rollouts over 4 or 5 years in 15, 20 countries. And my frustration always in that business was, but what happens after my consultants leave? What happens? You just spent $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 on a global rollout. What happens? And when I was first sort of architecting Close Strong, we spoke with 60 plus revenue and sales leaders just about pipeline and forecast and things that they were struggling with, and when I said to them, and we started talking about the different solutions they could use to fix their problems, and I talked to them about training, and I was like, hey, you've been there, so that SKO, it's Challenger, then you roll it all out, and then what happens? 100% of them were like, yes. But that's the only model we really know right now. Like, and American companies spend $26 billion a year on sales training. So my motivation for Close Strong was, but here's the other thing we know. One of our major customers asked us to help them coach, not teach them how, but help them close $1 billion of renewals in their pipeline. And I realized through that practice a number of things. Unbelievably effective. When you and I are working together on a deal, really effective. They wanted more of that. The other thing I realized is that it was very difficult for me to scale as I started adding consultants who weren't necessarily A players. I'm sad to say. And then it was very expensive for the customer. It was about $10,000 a deal, but some of the deals we were working on were $10 million, right? Renewals. But so that was the genesis of Close Strong, to say, can we really rethink the way we enable salespeople? And now there's like 90% emphasis on the training event, and then maybe 10% emphasis on pull through and resources assigned to pull through. And then therefore, by the way, it never sticks. And then a year later at SKO, or 18 months later, you roll out the next one and you do it again and again. So our notion was, can we flip that and do 10% skill acquisition, right? And you don't, when I was teaching negotiation, I needed 2 days with people because I would never see them again. It wouldn't be reinforced, and I had to pound everything into their head. The model that we've come up with leveraging AI is, all right, yeah, we are going to teach you some of the basic concepts up front, but now for the next year, 24/7, 365, every rep on every deal at every stage, you're going to have an AI assistant that's working with you, who understands your value, your competitor's value, what an ideal customer looks like, where you're going to get commercial terms pressure. And that, and it's for us, it's part of our marketing is it's the same price as a 2-day event. So where are you going to get more return from, a 2-day event or a 365 24/7, ongoing support for reps. And there's so many companies we've gone into that have already rolled out some kind of sales training methodology. And we say, that's great. Our AI coach can reinforce some of that. Say, all right, James, you spent 300 grand on value selling, and I can help you pull that through. Plus I'll put in a plan to get this deal closed, right? With each rep. So that was the motivation, is just really rethinking the model. When sales training methodologies rolled out in the 80s, that was the model. Keep it generic. It's the same step-by-step process. You fill in the form on your deal in the class, and then everybody goes home. And that we try to replace that model by saying, no, it's got to be sustained, a sustained, ongoing deal applied effort in the context of your business, right? What are you selling? Who are you competing against?
And I talked earlier about training when you're sheep dipping someone, like, unless do great with people, but when you put someone in and then you pull them out and then you expect them to go back into their day-to-day work. And actually, I was at a training session a couple of weeks ago with, and again, I'm always intrigued by this as a sales mentor and trainer myself. And, the guys were saying, actually, how can we start to utilize this and how do we make this useful? And I guess what you're saying is exactly that. It's like having this, because you can't replace, you can't you can't clone me, can't clone my team, couldn't clone you. So it's like, how do you then build that knowledge into a tool, is what you're saying, that can then give you those elements and insights. So I'm excited to actually learn a bit more about it, because I'm also thinking myself, my word, this could put me out of business, but I'm also thinking to myself, but it goes back to the success, leads us to failures in time, but also how it will work and how it will operate. And no, it's exciting. So when are you mentioned you're launching quite soon, and yes, it's been like a journey for you to get this out and up and running.
Yeah, understatement, but yes. And we're investor back, and it's been a whole, speaking of change, it's dealing with institutional investors and a board and all that sort of stuff. I've been a solo entrepreneur for a long time. So all of that. And the surprising thing about that, by the way, if anyone's thinking about, hey, should I go that route? I don't know if I'm just lucky, but my board and my investors are not like looking over my shoulder. I go to them when I'm wrestling with stuff and say, hey, help me. They're problem solvers. They're consultants. And we chose investors who had some chops in the tech space. So yeah, it for anyone who's wrestling with that decision, again, maybe I've just been lucky, but I don't dread my board meetings. I walk into my board meetings going, all right, guys, I got 4 things I'm wrestling with here. You're smart people.
Well, I've raised mine myself, and when you've got people that want to support you and want to help and don't just want to interfere, then it makes a big difference, doesn't it? Because they're on your side to get things done, and you feel like they're there to support you. So it does make the difference. So talk to me. So when we come into the stage when, where can people hear more about this then? Really, in terms of if someone's listening to the podcast and they're going, right, well, this sounds intriguing, and what does it look like, and how can they get access? What's the story? Is this going to be available to everyone? Is it US only initially? What's happening?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. We're doing our first private beta in a couple here. So it's there, and our I will shamelessly plug closestrong1word.ai is the website, and there is there's a demo on there. I do a voiceover demo of walking through the current look of our product. As you can guess, it changes every 24 hours, but I probably did it about 10 days ago, and there's 7 new bells and whistles that weren't on there. But to get a general idea of what this thing does, because that's been part of there's no one like Salesforce and other people have these Einsteins and stuff that are supposed to be like sales assistants, but not in contact. understand your value versus this specific competitor, doesn't understand the commercial terms, we're going to get pressure, those kinds of things. And so our trick is I used to push back on doing demos, like, because I've always heard that in the software business, demos is death. But it's new enough that we have to demo all the time, because conceptually it's hard for people to get, because they can't go, oh, you're another recording device like Gong. So I get that, there's, you do this thing and it's like Gong, right? There's no one we can point to. The alternative to us right now is training. And so we have a new, fundamentally kind of breakthrough way to completely rethink training from event-based to sustained. So yeah, closestrong.ai, there's a demo on there.
Right. Well, look, I'm going to have a look myself, because as I say to you, as a trainer in the UK, or maybe that's where you come in time, we'll carry that conversation on, because it may well be some elements that I think you're right. There's in lots of areas around sales training that people go. I've just finished a 3-day session myself with some guys, and the way I work generally tends to be I'll work with people on an ongoing basis, so they've got access to me as well as part of that process. But you're right, that's not scalable, and you can't add 10 companies like that. It just doesn't work. So no, it's intriguing. So, look, it's been great to chat to you, Brian, and look, I could chat for forever and a day. I've kept you on the phone on the conversation for over 45 minutes already, and I'm conscious of your time. But just sort of finally, before we go, there's lots of stuff that you've shared and you've talked about, and what do you think is the biggest change in the world of you're obviously involved in backing and investing in and managing and driving an AI-based company now, but what do you see as the biggest change that is going on in the world of business development and negotiation and sales, and how should people be reacting and responding to that?
We have overcomplicated the living bejeebers out of it. There was a I don't know if bejeebers scales to other countries, but
no, I know what you mean.
But we have overcomplicated the hell out of it. Like we went from this part where we had no data, where we had no process, and now we have too much, and we've really overcomplicated it. And I've been in my podcast, I usually interview CROs and VPs of sales, and I've been interviewing reps lately. And what I'm hearing from them is, you're making it very difficult on me. Like, it's like, what do you need less of? And they're like, less complication, less hoops to jump through to get a deal done, to get a solution configured. And so we've overcomplicated it. One of the greatest things I learned about selling that is from Hugh McDonald, who ran in my old company our win-loss analysis. And over 12 years, he did about $20 billion of win-loss analysis. And what he said to me is, based on all that analysis, I can tell you why winners win. And I was like, wait a minute, this is like holy grail for people who sell. And it's also the title of a great book, by the way, but which neither one of us have written. But he said, we win, again, based on billions of dollars of very deep analysis, we win when we show customers how we meet their needs at higher confidence and lower risk than an alternative. And I think to me, that with all the complications that are out there, and all the all the metadata that's pushing to reps and telling them go ping this person, do that, the holy grail is, why me? What are you trying to get done? And what are the 2 or 3 reasons that I present higher probability of hitting your KPIs at a lower risk profile? That's what it's all about. So I think there's almost this. And you know what? If we're going to build tools and technology and everything else, let's wrap it around that. That's the reasons why people buy. And by the way, the more reasons of higher confidence and lower risk, the less pressure you're going to get on commercial terms, right? That's going to power back to where all the tactics come from, right? It's how do you meet the needs better than the alternative? You got to know their needs. You got to know the alternative. You have to be able to make those connections better. And a lot of folks say, well, I'm pretty similar to my alternative. Fine. But if you make those connections better than the alternative, you will win down perceived value, right? Say, okay, you're trying to get these 4 things done. Let me make direct correlations between what I do and how I'm going to move those KPIs, and why that's not risky. You'll win. You'll differentiate. Jim Dickey, who's one of my advisors and ran Chief Sales Officer Insights and is an industry analyst, he said to me about a year ago that in today's market, the way we sell might be just as important as what we sell. And so that's it. If the way you're selling is, I really understand, James, what the decision you're trying to make, and I can come to you and make it crystal clear on how that decision should be made, and why this decision is going to drive those KPIs that you're after, we'll win more deals. And that's where the focus needs to be. There's a lot of other noise out there right now.
I absolutely love that. I mean, it's just music to my ears when I hear it. And I talk about people, and before we finish, the four phases of selling, which is, the problem with the desire. I'd probably query the need bit. I get the point, the need, the problem, the desire, understanding them, belief, and trust. I say to people, if you've got a problem and they feel that you understand them, and they feel that you really get them, and they get them, and you really, going back to your point about caring and being really interested in their interests, and then you give them some belief, here's how we're going to solve it, here's how we make it happen, here's how we bring the magic to life, and here's who we've done it for before, and here's how you can trust and talk to these people, you win deals. It's like,
but the part that's missing about that, I agree with all of it. What most people miss is better than the alternative. I'll take everything you just said, and because many of us were taught in the olden days to be super aggressive, which we know doesn't really work anymore. But many of us were also taught, like, you don't talk bad about your competitors. And I don't think you talk bad about the competitors, but we have got to make it clear to them why us versus somebody else, so everything you just said, and adding in that one more moving part about, again, that's a consultative role. If you're doing that well and it's objective analysis, it's a real consultative role.
Yeah, I agree. Totally love it. Absolutely love it. So, look, Brian, absolutely brilliant to chat to you. And you've got so much sales wisdom and knowledge that I love. And it's great to meet people who have a similar ethos to the way I like, sell and I share. And again, all the stuff I share on my YouTube channel and podcast is all about this sort of way of doing things in a way that gets the reward and result. And sometimes, I feel, I sometimes train and engage with people, and I see other people listen to it, and they're going about it in a way that doesn't necessarily resonate with that. But it's so great when you meet other people that have a similar methodology and an approach to selling that works. And look, I'm excited to see a bit more about Close Strong. So look, where can people reach you? Where's the best place for them to get access to you? Obviously, to go to closestrong.ai, but they reach.
Yeah, or it's Brian at glowstrong.ai. And yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. I think my name is up on the screen. LinkedIn as well. Yeah, I love LinkedIn connections. And I love chatting about this stuff. I really enjoyed talking to you about it. And likewise, I could keep going. This is a really fun discussion, but nobody wants to listen to a 2-hour podcast. So
exactly that. So look, we'll put the links to Brian's LinkedIn profile below, and we'll also put the links to Close Strong, because again, I think it's an area that's really intriguing, especially for obviously senior sales leaders, how they can keep that going. I'm intrigued and wish you the very best of luck with it, and see how it goes in the next couple of weeks and months. And I'm sure it's going to be incredibly exciting. I shall see it grow, I'm sure, from here in the UK, but see it happen in the US and look over and think, right, I had a chance to interview the founder a few years back. So that's what I'm hoping it goes really well for you. But look, great to chat to you. I love so much of what you said. Love the quotes. Success. I've written so many things down here. Success is never final. I love this. It's not a learning curve; it's a learning stick. I love that as well. It's a great quotes you've given here about just diagnose then prescribe. Again, love those aspects. So look, so many nuggets of gold, and we're looking forward to sharing the podcast with people and helping them build the businesses and grow the way they want to. But that whole ethos around doing it in the right way and caring, I think that's a great way to think about it as well. Just be in a position where you care. And I always talk about being the hidden 10%. The hidden 10% is your bit that people don't see, but it's the bit that just comes through your pores. It's because you just give a shit.
Yeah, it would be, yes. I would be remiss in not thanking Londoners for backing my Chicago Bears a week ago when the Bears played in London. We were watching it here in the U.S. and I didn't know the Bears were the home team. It was ridiculous. So thank you, London.
Anyways, at all, it's great. Well, hopefully you get a chance to come over here soon. But great to chat to you, Brian. Really loved the conversation. Put some links into the show notes in there. And as I say, got a huge amount of experience and knowledge, which over the years, which you've been kind of, you're really kind to share. But I love the fact also as well, even as someone that's got all that experience and knowledge, you're going for another hit. And it's like, no, I'm going to swing the bat again. And what you've got with Close Strong, he sounds excited. So look, wish you all the best of luck with that. And thanks again for being a great guest.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
So there was Brian Dietmeyer. Fantastic guest. So many nuggets of gold there, which were incredible. That was the podcast for this week. If you love what we do and the podcast, please like and share it. Please like the episode. Share it with other people so the knowledge and wisdom that Brian shared can be shared with lots of other people. But until next week, have a brilliant week. Thanks for your ears as normal, and see you soon. Take care.